Hey people, how you feeling?
Welcome back to the PapaJugg Podcast. Obviously, the audio is not working perfectly well tonight. I hope everybody's doing great on what is probably a Friday for you if you're watching this live. If you're not watching this live, then I hope it's a great whatever day it is. So, congratulations to you. It is good to be back. We are in episode 34. Last week's episode was sort of themed around conspiracy theories. It was the magical episode 33, and we talked about 33 and conspiracies. And this one is going to be themed around health. A lot of the topics that I discovered this week and that I was doing research on are all health related, but in interesting ways. So you're going to hear NASA come up in different stories. You're going to hear lasers come up in different stories. It's an interesting collaboration of ideas. So we're going to be talking about all that. And if again, please, as just a quick reminder, if you have not yet subbed to the YouTube channel, please drop a subscription over there. That would really help me on my path to YouTube partner. And if you have not yet followed whatever platform you are currently listening to me on, whether it's Spotify or iHeart or iTunes or whatever, if you haven't dropped a follow on that, please do that as well. It really helps me grow the audience of the podcast. And then, go tell your friends how amazing it is and go do those things. We're going to get started with Fast Facts. So, let's see. I don't know if anybody noticed. There was some news coverage about it, not a ton, but today there was an earthquake in New Jersey. That doesn't happen very often. It was a 4.8 earthquake. For those of us in California, we call that a who cares. In New Jersey, they call it some sort of sign of the apocalypse. Obviously, they don't get a lot of those. Here in California, we get a lot of those. 4.8s are not a big deal out here, but doing the research into it, I found out why it seemed to be a bigger deal in New York and New Jersey and Massachusetts and Pennsylvania and all of that. The soil type, the ground itself, is significantly different. Those tectonic plates have settled for a long, long time. They don't move a whole lot. Earthquakes do happen occasionally, but this was like the biggest earthquake to happen in Jersey in like 200 plus years. Like, it's just not a thing. And the rock type is very different as well. So interestingly, when they have an earthquake, it's going to travel harder, but also faster through these massive rocks that are under their ground. Whereas here in California, we move all the time. We have much more loose soil and sediment and things like that. So it was really interesting to kind of learn about why it was a difference. But again, here in California, 4.8, most people won't even notice it. Out in Jersey, they felt it at the UN and they were thinking, should we stop our meeting where we're discussing the terrible conflict in Israel and Gaza? And they decided, no, we're going to keep going. So interesting thing there. But yes, there was a 4.8 in Jersey. It was epicenter was about 5 miles outside White House Station. But again, they felt it throughout multiple states. Probably because of the rock type they have out there. So interesting stuff. Up next, we've got an interesting piece of news. This was something that I wasn't expecting, but we've just learned that there is going to be a board game based on the work of Rob Zombie. Yeah, it's actually called House of a Thousand Corpses. It is a horror game. It's going to be a 1 to 4 player co-op game from US publisher Trick or Treat Studios. So if you are into Rob Zombie and or horror and or board games, you've got to check out the upcoming Rob Zombie board game, House of a Thousand Corpses. It is due out from Trick or Treat sometime in Q4 of this year. So we've got, 6 to 9 months to wait. But we'll see where that shakes out. And you've got yourself a board game. So check that out. Up next, Crypto Bro. It is Do Kwon, who was the founder of the Terra coin, basically a giant fraud scheme. The whole thing, it collapsed in 2022. It was terrible. A jury deliberated for a grand total of 2 hours today before finding him guilty of SEC violations. The SEC went after him. I think their first charges were filed like 2 to 3 years ago. But Kwon decided to run all over the world and try to escape justice. He was eventually caught and sent back to the US. And so he was on trial on SEC charges. They have found him guilty of fraud. And again, the evidence was so overwhelming that the jury, I think, what I would imagine happened, the jury sat around, looked at the evidence and said, yeah, dude's guilty. What are we getting for lunch, though? This is on the court's dime, so let's stick around for a while. Pretty sure that's how it worked. So Terra Labs, which is a company that he co-founded, I had to quote this. I should have made this tonight's Say What, but we're not going to do a Say What because this wasn't cool enough. But this is what a Terraform spokesperson said. We are very disappointed with the verdict, which we do not believe is supported by the evidence. Wrong. The evidence was so not in favor of your client who ran around, your co-founder who ran around the globe trying to escape all this crap. The evidence was so overwhelming. They found him guilty within 2 hours. Like, let's not pretend the evidence wasn't there. Let's not pretend that his crypto franchise thing just completely exploded and bankrupted billions of dollars of investments. Let's not pretend that governments have been trying to pursue him to go get that money back. And let's not pretend that there is mountains of evidence, which is why he's guilty. So he will be off the jail again. Okay. So here, listen, the next piece. I've always said my gaming streams aren't political. My Discord isn't political. And this podcast isn't political. The news that I'm about to give you has nothing to do with politics. It's just an interesting observation about a thing that has politics attached to it, but that's not what we're talking about in this Fast Facts segment. Wanted to tell you about something very sad that happened, another thing very sad that happened in this conflict between Israel and Hamas. For those who haven't kept up with the news, Hamas attacked Israel. Israel has counterattacked with overwhelming force. That is not the point of this story. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have died as a result of this. Many of them children. The interesting thing is that the governments of the world, the Western governments, mostly the governments that have been supporting Israel in this, they've had their reservations about how Israel has conducted this war. They've had some public reservations and a lot of private ones. What I find interesting is that last week, or this week, I guess, some aid workers were killed, and they worked for World Central Kitchen. Now, this is a charity organization run by a very famous chef, Jose Andres, and it's a food-based charity. They try to make sure that people can still eat. A lot of their workers were killed by an Israeli airstrike. It was a drone strike. This seemed to send people over an edge. You killed aid workers. Okay. What I found interesting about this was that the tens of thousands of dead children didn't prompt this response yet. We've been doing this now for 6 months. Like, this is 5 months, sorry, 5 months of combat. We're now getting like President Biden of the United States spoke to the Prime Minister of Israel and flat out told him, you need to protect civilians or else. And the or else is basically we reduce our funding for you, we reduce our munitions to you, we reduce our public support, whatever. The Israel-U.S. alliance is a strong one. So for the U.S. to start threatening Israel with a lack of confidence is a big deal. What I thought was interesting was that you had to kill celebrity-supported aid workers to get to this point. Wherever you stand on this conflict, on this war, pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli, hate them both, love them, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. I just found it interesting that the people who had to die were the employees of a celebrity chef. Employees, volunteer, whatever, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. That was what got people upset. That was where we said, now you need to protect civilians. That's weird to me. Take that for what it's worth. So I talked about NASA. I said that you guys were going to hear about NASA a couple of times tonight, and here is the first one. I think this is cool. Last week in Fast Facts, I talked to you about the eclipse that is happening on April 8th. It is going to traverse basically Texas up to Maine, kind of across the United States there. But it is going to be a full solar eclipse, which is going to be really, really cool to see. Please don't do what former presidents have done and stare directly at the sun. Moving on. Anyways, so I thought this was a cool story. I will read you the headline. NASA is joining with Twitch, Microsoft, and Epic for a live stream event featuring Eclipse-themed Minecraft and Fortnite games. I think that's pretty interesting. It's going to be called the Look Up event. It will feature a mix of the solar eclipse and streamers playing eclipse-based games. The Minecraft game mode called Look Up will feature educational elements as players solve puzzles and answer eclipse-themed questions as they attempt to escape the moon and get to Earth before the eclipse happens. It's probably not as cool to watch on the moon after all. In Fortnite, players will venture through different areas that can be accessed by moving through different parts of the eclipse's path of totality. The gameplay streams will appear alongside live footage of the eclipse provided by NASA in a lively co-stream. That sounds pretty cool. And I love that NASA is looking at modern forms of entertainment. Now, I don't know. I mean, maybe NASA's doing shit with CNN or, who knows, like ABC or whatever. I don't know. But the fact that they're looking at Twitch and Microsoft and Epic and saying, guys, let's reach younger audiences. Let's reach more technologically savvy audiences. Let's get people involved in new ways in science. Let's get them looking up. And they literally called it the Look Up event. So I thought that was really cool. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad it's happening. But it should be very cool. And don't forget, the eclipse is going to be April 8th. So if you are in a place where you can see part or all of it, check it out. The next one, I think is, oh God, I talked about this last week. I want to say it's like 2045. I think it's the next time the United States is going to have a total solar eclipse. Please tell me it's on this piece of paper. It's not craptastic. The Look Up live stream will be available on the National Education. No. Why does that say NEA? I thought it was all NASA. Who the hell? The NEA, the National Educators Association? I don't know. That's weird. Anyways, so it's going to be doing a lot of stuff. So definitely check that out. But again, I think the next total solar eclipse is 2045. So if you can't see it, see it. Yeah, there it is. Texas, all the way up until like the Chicago, little south of Chicago. And then it's basically going to hit the Canadian border east of the Great Lakes, and then out into the Atlantic after it crosses Maine. So there you go. Okay. 2044 and 2045. Thank you very much, Blood Tide Gaming in chat. Speaking of things that happen once in a while, the cicadas are coming. If you live in a place in any part of the eastern United States, and I think parts of Canada as well, the cicada is they're period. It's not period. Is it periodical? I think it's periodical cicadas. Yeah, the cicada-geddon. But they're periodical cicadas. They come out every 13 to 17 years. There is a cousin species that come out every year. They basically hibernate for part of the year, and then they're alive every part of the year. This is a species that comes out every 13 to 17 years. It is insane. Literally trillions of these things will mob wherever they go. They are migrating, they are molting, they are mating, they are doing all of their things before they go back underground for another 17 years or whatever it's going to be. It creates public health hazards. It creates driving hazards. I mean, public events have to get canceled. It is a nightmare. And it's really, I read this really cool thing. Where did it go? Yeah, we've got trillions of this is a quote from a Georgia Tech biophysicist named Saad Bamla. We've got trillions of these amazing living organisms come out of the earth, climb up on trees, and it's just a unique experience, a sight to behold. It's like an entire alien species living underneath our feet, and then some prime number years, they come out to say hello. What is periodic cicadas? Cool. Where did it go? Yes, the last time that these two broods came out together, because there are different, they call them broods, but to translate that, it's like different groups of them. So it's not like the entire species does it. They do this in cycles. Both broods are coming out at the same time. That has not happened since 1803. Thomas Jefferson wrote about it. He called them locusts. He didn't know, because big surprise, the president of the United States was not an entomologist. But he wrote about it in 1803, the last time this happened. And I think that's pretty crazy. So be very cautious of this. The largest geographic brood in the nation, called Brood 19, comes out every 13 years, is about to march through the southeast, having already created countless boreholes in the red Georgia clay. It's a sure sign of the coming cicada occupation. They emerge when the ground warms to 64 degrees, which is happening earlier than it used to because of climate change. The bugs are brown at first, but they get darker as they mature, and they've got the ugliest bright red eyes. It looks like an alien species. It is just freaky looking. Soon after the insects appear in large numbers in Georgia and the rest of the southeast, their cicada cousins that come out every 17 years will inundate Illinois. They are called Brood 13. This is where like less educated, Bronze Age sheep herders might have started realizing that, oh my God, the apocalypse is upon us. No, it's just bugs. Relax. It's fine. But they're ugly, they're big, they're loud, and they take over everything. So just FYI. So that is happening. Up next, we've got, Ninja. If you guys haven't heard, Ninja was diagnosed with melanoma. Strangely, he had his melanoma lesion cyst growth thing. The cancer was on the bottom of his foot. He released it. He put out a statement saying that he was diagnosed with melanoma. They were going to do a surgery to try to get it all out. I don't know about you guys, but he seemed very bothered by it. Like he seemed very worried about it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be, but this is one of those things where if you catch it early, which he did, it is a very treatable form of cancer. It's something that we've got a lot of decades of history with. We understand it. We kind of know what we're doing with it. And typically, unless you catch it very, very late, it's a totally, simple thing to take care of. Anyways, update on Ninja. They did the surgery and he got his lab results back. He actually announced it earlier today. Ninja got his lab results back. Everything is fine. He is technically cancer-free now, according to his doctors. Everything was great. He has been using this as an opportunity to remind people to please do skincare, which I wholeheartedly recommend because I had skin cancer. And it's not fun. I've got giant scars on my left arm because of it. So, check yourself. If you see something abnormal on your skin, which is the largest organ in your body, I should say. It's the largest organ of your body. Let's switch prepositions. Your skin is the largest organ of your body. If you see something unusual with it, go get it dealt with. It literally can kill you if you don't. So don't leave it alone. Go take care of yourself and just, ask a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a dermatologist, just be like, hey, what do you think? And if they're concerned, be concerned and then go deal with it. Go do what you got to do. But Ninja has been using this moment to remind people to do skincare. He's been reminding people that this is a real thing and it can happen to anybody, even on the bottom of your feet. And we can all, we can all make the go touch grass jokes about gamers and, need to go outside. Obviously, he went outside enough to get skin cancer. So take care of yourself. Put on sunscreen if you have to, long sleeves if you have to, long pants if you have to, hats if you do what you got to do to protect yourself. That's all I'm saying. And teach your kids this stuff. Good Lord. Anyways, so that is it for Fast Facts tonight. We are going to move on to our science segment, which is going to be our last segment of the night. You get to go home early. I wanted to talk to you about something that is kind of a carryover from last week's episode with conspiracies. I think we have all seen in our lives that there are hoax medical treatments. There are things that people purport to be amazing that actually do nothing. Or they only work for certain people. So for example, there's some treatments that work with a certain body chemistry or a certain blood type or a certain condition, and not all the treatment for example, one form of cancer may be different than other forms of cancer, things like that. We especially learned this during COVID when everybody was getting their medical advice from their plumber on Facebook, or they were asking their sister because, she once had a thing and now everybody has to ask them. And all of a sudden they're somehow medical expert. This is not how science works. Okay. Science is a repeatable empirical process to discover whatever facts can be discovered through that process. Just because something is not comfortable to you, or not familiar to you or not even logical to you, that doesn't mean it's wrong. That doesn't mean you should dismiss it. That means you may not understand it yet, and there is nothing wrong with going to learn more. And that's what I did. For the last few years, actually the last, 3 decades, four-ish decade, we're in 4-ish decades now. So there has been a claim. We'll put it that way. There has been a claim about a particular kind of medical treatment or even a cosmetic treatment. And it's been skeptically viewed. And I was one of those skeptics. I sort of looked at it. I was like, well, the science makes sense. Sort of. I'm fairly scientifically literate. I've read scientific journals. I try to stay up to speed on a lot of different sciences, everything from genetics to astrophysics to chemistry. I try to stay up to date on science because I think it's a fascinating thing that will improve our species over the long haul. I was a skeptic of this. What I'm talking about is red light therapy. You may have heard it referred to as other things. It's been called low-level laser treatments. It's not infrared. If you've heard infrared, that is not the case. Infrared is not going to do the same thing. You may have heard it called low-level laser therapy. My favorite was photobiomodulation. That's always a great one. If you want to just, drop a fun word at a party, this is another word for red light therapy. It's photobiomodulation. Good one. You gotta love that. Write that down. We'll drop it in the chat. It was red light therapy. And again, when I had first heard of it, I was like, okay, I kind of get the science of it. I wasn't completely familiar with how it purported to work. I hadn't seen much research on it. And I was like, yeah, okay. If somebody sees results from it, I'm happy. But it needs to be real results, and it needs to not be pseudoscience, and it needs to not be the placebo effect. It needs to be real results if we're going to endorse that. Well, over the past couple of weeks, I've been learning a lot more about it. I've been doing a lot more research about it for personal reasons for somebody in my family. And so I've been digging into this a lot more. I want to make sure that it is something that is going to help them. I want to make sure that it is not going to have long-term negative side effects. I want to make sure it is something that is a reasonable choice for them. And I want to make sure it's safe. So anyways, I've been doing a lot of research into this, and it turns out the research is actually a little deeper than I thought it was. It is still very much needing to be researched. This is something that a lot more money should be poured into, because what I have seen so far is actually damn promising. The cool thing was this week, or I guess maybe it was last week, I guess. There was a new study that said through red light therapy, very specifically tailored, it has to be done a certain way, but through this red light therapy, scientists were able in a small group to actually prevent and repair vision loss. I'll get to that in a minute. First, let me talk about what red light therapy is. I'm going to read this directly from an article that was written by... it was reviewed by Poonam Sachdev, who is a medical doctor. They have an MD. It was published in 2021. It was written by Camille Noe Pagan. And the article is, What is Red Light Therapy? With red light therapy, I'm quoting here, you expose your skin to a lamp device or a laser with a red light. A part of your cells called the mitochondria, sometimes called the power generators of your cells. You'll probably hear that like in a middle school science class. They are absolutely the power plants of the cell. They soak it up and it makes more energy. Some experts think that this helps cells repair themselves and become healthier. It spurs healing in skin and muscle tissue. Now, I said skin and muscle tissue, but then just a couple minutes ago, I said that it was repairing vision. We'll get to how that works. Red light therapy uses very low levels of heat and doesn't hurt or burn the skin. It's not the same type of light used in tanning booths, and it doesn't expose your skin to damaging UV rays. So the UV portion of the light spectrum is very far away from infrared. Infrared is very low level light. This is not infrared. This is visible red light. So it's slightly above, slightly higher than infrared. Okay. What does it treat? Researchers have known about red light therapy for a while, but there aren't a lot of studies on it, and they don't know if it's better than other types of treatment used to help you heal. Okay, so that's a good point. I hadn't read that paragraph yet, but that's a good point. So like I said, for the benefit of my family member, one of the reasons that I was looking into this was because I wanted to make sure that this was sort of a better option than others. If there was a more beneficial treatment, then that was what I would want to talk to them about. But I liked what I found here. Not that me liking it matters. The truth, I don't have to like gravity, but I will still fall out of a goddamn plane if I jump. I don't need to like gravity. It's just there. So, again, me liking it doesn't really matter, but I was able to find evidence that supported why this is helpful. And we're going to get into that. This list, when I found this list on WebMD, I was very, very interested. Red light therapy may help with the following: dementia, dental pain, hair loss, osteoarthritis, tendinitis, and wrinkles. And now we can potentially add a new one: vision loss. We'll talk about that. What are the risks? Now, this was a good question. This was one of the questions that I had. Are there risks? Because I thought that it was much lower level red light. I thought it was closer to the infrared or in the infrared spectrum. And we were literally just like irradiating people or, not good. Red light therapy is generally considered safe, even though researchers aren't exactly sure how and why it works. I have to put an asterisk on that statement myself. The science team didn't do it. I'm putting the asterisk just for the sake of disclaimer here. Researchers aren't exactly sure how and why it works. The phrase exactly is the key part of that. No, most researchers don't know exactly why it works, but they have a fundamental concept of how it works. It's because the light actually triggers the reactions inside the cell's mitochondria. The mitochondria feed on this kind of light. It's beneficial. It helps, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. It helps stimulate photosynthesis in plants. Well, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but we were evolved on the same planet as plants. So, kind of the same concept. And strangely enough, that's partially how it was discovered. I had no idea about how this got, because this literally seems like one of those things where some jackass is sitting in they're getting sunburns and they're like, well, maybe if I just turn down the sun a little bit, I'll get healthy. Like, I kind of thought it was that dumb. No. It came about as a result of scientific research at NASA, which I thought was cool. But bottom line, so far, nobody's really been able to document significant risk from any of the treatments that have been experimented with. It's just light. I think that's cool. Let's keep going. So, there is a great article on the NASA website. Okay, this was one of the things that I'd love to see. NASA research illuminates, great headline. NASA research illuminates medical uses of light. Experimentation helped demystify, legitimize, and simplify medical uses for a long-known but little understood light therapy. So, here's the study. Oh shoot. Why does it never save these things? Here we go. What most of us don't know, I didn't know this because I think this is fascinating. The way that this was discovered was through NASA research on LEDs. The things that, now light bulbs are made of and monitors are made of and all. LEDs. That was how this got discovered. Check this out. In the late 1980s, engineer yes, LEDs, right? Yeah, see. In the late 1980s, engineer Ron Ignatius worked at a company that partnered with the Wisconsin Center for Space Automation and Robotics, which was funded by NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I don't know why those locations matter, but whatever, they're part of the story. As LED technology entered the commercial market, Ignatius worked with with the Wisconsin place to study the new lighting for growing plants in space. So now we have light bulbs that don't generate massive amounts of heat. They don't require as much power. Can we send this up in a space shuttle or up to the International Space Station, or do whatever we got to do? Can we grow plants with LEDs instead of the more traditional light bulbs? That was the research. In 1989, Ignatius founded Quantum Devices, Inc., and a small business innovation research funding from NASA paid the company to complete an LED plant growth unit that grew potatoes on the space shuttle in 1995. Okay, this was so cool. We always hear about science experiments going up in space shuttles. I mean, when the space shuttle was flying, it's like, oh, we've got this experiment on this rocket, and we got this experiment on this shuttle, Like, we're launching all these experiments. This was one of them. How exciting. So, they were trying to grow potatoes on the space shuttle in 1995. But the research had a side effect. The LEDs were red and blue, because these are the most efficient light wavelengths for driving photosynthesis. Okay, again, it's making sense to my science brain. I get it. And NASA scientists who spent time working with their hands under the lighting found that abrasions on their hands seemed to heal faster than normal. That's amazing. They're literally just looking at like little tiny scratches and scrapes or whatever might be on their hand as a result of being in the space shuttle or as a result of the research. Who knows? Whatever. They've got little cuts and scratches. Not a big deal. But they were like, wait a minute. Our hands that are under these lights are healing faster than the rest of our body when we get little cuts and scrapes on those. What? That was how NASA stumbled into the world of medical light therapy. The agency saw a possible solution to a long-standing problem of space travel. Without gravity, astronauts' muscles and bones atrophy, and any wounds heal slowly, all of which endanger missions. Ignatius also became interested in possible medical uses for LEDs when he learned that Harry Whalen, a neurologist at the Medical College of Wisconsin, was investigating medical applications of light. The two met, they started to collaborate, and they started to fund research into doing light therapy. That's amazing. This is the kind of stuff that blows my mind. So, when some scientifically ignorant jackass in Congress says, why do we give NASA billions of dollars? What do we get out of going to the moon? This is what we get. We get discoveries that private corporations don't have the ability or the finances or both to fund and execute. Private corporations have to do things for a profit. They can't dump tons of money. Well, guess what? The government can, the government does, and the government should. This is what we get out of it. We get private sector investment. We get private sector employment because NASA did something to see what could be done in space. They don't need to figure out how do we do photosynthesis on Earth. We've got a giant fucking ball of fusion in the sky that does that. They needed to do it on a space shuttle. That's why they did it. That's what we get out of NASA. That's why we invest. I'm just impressed. So they go through all this process. Now, let's talk about why I got so deeply invested. I was about 3/4 of my way through this research when this article dropped. This came out, let's see. This is where I saw it. So, researchers discover how to improve, notice it's not stop, improve eyesight naturally. A small study by researchers at University College London may have discovered how to improve eyesight in a cost-effective and easy way. All you got to do is look at a deep red light. Staring into the light, and this is the part that blew my mind when I read the article. Staring into the light for 3 minutes a day for at least 2 weeks can dramatically recover eyesight deficits. It was a published paper. It is a peered review paper. It was published in the Journal of Gerontology. The United Nations World Population Prospects predicts that 1 in 6 people will be over the age of 60 by 2050. That doesn't seem like a high number to me, but maybe they dropped it in just for some, pizzazz in an article. 1 in 6 people. That's like, all right. And, anyways, even now, nations around the world are already trending older. That is true. The global population is trending older because most Western populations, especially when you get into countries like Russia, a lot of really cold countries aren't having a lot of kids. Anyways, so they are literally, their populations are shrinking. The Chinese are now doing this because of the Chinese population control numbers. Their populations have been shrinking for the last few years. So with less young people and more old people, we have the baby boom older. The oldest baby boomers are now 75-ish. 70. Yeah. So it's an older population around the world. Quote, as you age, your visual system declines significantly, particularly once over 40, said the University of College London College of Ophthalmology, apparently a paragon of, okay, whatever, that's dumb. Quote, your retinal sensitivity and your color vision are both gradually undermined with an aging population. This is an increasingly important issue. Around age 40, now this is where I'm connecting all these articles for you, okay? Your grandmother is a baby boomer. She's 83. Typically the baby boom is considered starting around 1944, 1945. If your grandmother's 83, she was born really, really during the war. That's like 1940. That's a boomer? All right, whatever. You go, grandma. You do your thing. Anyways, so like I said, I'm going to connect these articles. Sorry, for those of you listening to the audio, I'm commenting in chat. Around age 40, the mitochondria of the cells begin to wind down, reducing their output of cellular energy. What did we just learn from the NASA study? Right? Here we go. Your retina, that's the carpet of nerves along the back wall of your eyeball, contains cells called photoreceptors which detect light. Again, this is the part that made sense in my brain, but I wasn't sure that light would be like, is it really this simple? These are energy-hungry little fellows, and because of this, the retina contains a high density of mitochondria. UCL says that's the reason that the cells here decline faster than in other organs. So while your other organs may at least be functioning or appear to be functioning normally, your eyesight can be noticeably degrading. As the energy begins to ebb, so too does your vision. The end result is a decline in sensitivity and color vision. To figure out how to improve eyesight, the team turned their attention to the mitochondria. Mitochondria absorb some light wavelengths better than others, according to the scientists. This absorption leads to an increase in energy production. Wavelengths are just what they say. I'm not going to go into what a wavelength is. To try to stem or reverse this decline, we sought to reboot the retina's aging cells with short bursts of long-wave light. By the way, red is a very long-wave light wave. When you get into white, when you go like blue, white, when you go into that, the brighter the color, the shorter the wavelength. Just so you know. Short bursts of long-wave light. The team attempted to goose cellular energy production using deep red light, which has been shown to have beneficial effects in the photoreceptors of the freaky compound eyes of fruit flies, bumblebees, as well as mice. I didn't know anything about that. Apparently, they've been doing red light research on other animals. Makes sense. Before you blast humans with red lights, you might want to do it on something that's a little less human. Sadly, I'm sorry. If you don't like lab experimentation, then ignore what I just said, but it's a fact. We tend to try to protect ourselves by not experimenting on ourselves first. Whatever. The study recruited 24 subjects, split evenly between men and women, and ranging in age from 28 to 72. Now, I thought that was interesting because it's such a small group and you've got this really big age difference. Do you really have enough of a control group? And I will say, to the scientists' credit, they do talk about the fact that this is a very small study. It needs to be replicated in much larger numbers, but they felt comfortable with it. And again, it has gone through the peer review process. All of the subjects have no diagnosed ocular diseases. After having the efficacy of their rods, which enable peripheral and low light vision, And their cones, which moderate color vision, measured, they were given a small LED light, just like what NASA did. Subjects looked into the deep red light, placing their eyes over the end of it for 3 minutes a day over the course of 2 weeks. They could even keep their eyes closed. And this, I think, is so cool. You can do it with your eyes closed because the red light is such a long wavelength, it goes right through your eyelids. Doesn't matter. It's like a gravity wave. It doesn't matter what's in front. It's just going. I thought that was amazing. So your eyelid doesn't stop red light. So great. Now, you may have noticed that, I don't know if you've ever looked like, especially a pale-skinned person, somebody who has very light skin. When you look through them, it appears red. It's not just blood. Researchers found it's because the body is absorbing most of the other wavelengths. Sorry, I should clarify what I'm talking about. I just get excited because this is so cool. The reason that when you peer through a pale-skinned person and it usually appears some shade of red is because it's absorbing the other lights, or it's reflecting the other light waves. Red passes right through. Blah, blah, blah. Researchers found that while the deep red light did nothing in the younger end of the cohort, those over 40 showed significant improvements, especially when it came to color detection. The cones just loved that light, apparently. According to UCL, color contrast sensitivity improved by up to 20% in some individuals. This kind of reminds me, if you guys have ever seen those videos of people who gain, they're colorblind and they gain color sight for the first time using those special glasses. It kind of reminds me of that. Like, imagine what you think is blue is actually like a really muted blue. And then all of a sudden you see like a vivid blue because of this light therapy. Like, that's a game changer for your life. It's cool. All of a sudden you realize your whole wardrobe sucks. The rod sensitivity, peripheral and low light vision also improved, but not as significantly. So the cones were a big deal. Quote, our study shows that it is possible to significantly improve vision that has declined in aged individuals using simple, brief exposures to light wavelengths that recharge the energy system that has declined in the retina cells, rather like recharging a battery. I loved the research. I'm continuing. I'm not quite done. There's a couple of questions I still want answered about red light, and because the problem is it's not all wavelengths of red. Like you can't just hold a red light bulb up to you and say, look, I got my red light therapy. Most of the research that I've discovered says that it needs to be at specific wavelengths. For example, this entire article that I'm reading about the vision correction, right here, quote, the technology is simple and very safe, using a deep red light of a specific wavelength that is absorbed by mitochondria in the retina that supply energy for cellular function. Our devices cost about $14 to make. The technology is highly accessible to members of the public. But again, it has to be at certain wavelengths. And as far as I can tell, it's not the same wavelength depending on what you're trying to do. So if you go to a facility that just says we have red light therapy, I don't know what the likelihood is that it's actually medically beneficial red light therapy. It could just be red light bulbs, in which case that's a fraud. So, you got to make sure that the manufacturing of whatever equipment you're using is doing this under proper conditions, using the proper wavelength, and it's the proper wavelength for whatever treatment you're seeking. If you're trying to repair, I don't know, your brain, for example, well, guess what? Red light isn't stopped by your eyelids, but it is stopped by your skull. So you might need a different wavelength. You might need a different, quite plainly, a shade of red to do different treatments. And that's what I'm still trying to learn more about. I'm trying to find the research, but again, there's not a lot of it out there. And I don't subscribe to a whole lot of academic peer-reviewed journals. That's just not where I spend a lot of my money. So I'm trying to, exactly, Blood Tide, going to the red light district in Amsterdam is probably not the therapy that will improve your vision. It may actually hurt your vision, because the rumor is if you keep doing that, you're going to go blind. Moving right along. So anyways, I'm continuing the research into that stuff, and I would recommend that everybody please do your research before you think that this is some sort of a cure-all for anything. One of the original researchers who got into this actually was very concerned. They thought this was too easy. They were kind of the same camp I was, and they were like, this is some sort of weird panacea that cures everything because it just makes mitochondria work? And so she was like super skeptical. And then she did research and she found other studies and she's like, okay, this kind of works. So anyways, we're going to leave it at that tonight, guys. We're going to finish with our science segment, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you are listening on any of the audio platforms, Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, CastBox, TuneIn, other ones, please make sure to hit that follow button, share the episodes with your friends. And if you haven't already, drop a follow on YouTube. But for everybody else, I do live gaming broadcasts on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So check that out if you want to see me game live. We usually have scientific conversations. They're just not really smart ones. Go have yourself a good morning, a good day, a good night, whatever it is for you. And I will see you on Monday. See ya.